that you're here, and none of you want to listen to me talk, so I'm just going to introduce the one, the only, Mr. Jim Lee. It is on.
All right. Hold on a second.
You know what? I think we actually have a little problem.
Yeah, hold on, wait a second. Hold on. I think this. How's that sound? Can you hear me? You can hear me, right? In the back? It's not like a huge room, right? No?
Yeah, it's pretty soft.
Okay.
The mic almost has to be.
Do you have a lapel mic? There was a lapel mic for you.
Yeah, apparently with the Wi-Fi.
Oh, I see.
Sure. That's hard.
No, I was just going to set it down, set it up.
Take the pencil.
That was working out all right.
Is that better? You know?
So what I was thinking was if you just stand that.
Really? Hello? No.
Hello?
It has to be,
Yes.
All right.
so we don't have a, no, we're not
I
going
can draw my right hand and talk. I'll hold the microphone in my left. See that?
to.
No, it's all right.
I'm a very good mic stand. Hold on.
Can I take the stand and bring it up here?
Yep, that's my next plan. Hold on. We'll just go like 1940s radio boom mic style.
That's perfect.
How about if I don't fall off?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, who's gonna put me back together, right?
Hello?
It's the mic. Take that mic.
Do you mind? That would be lovely. So shorter. And then like,
Take the other one in. Put the other
Does
one.
anyone have a regular pencil, like a regular wooden pencil?
okay, try that, Jim. Try that.
I'll give it back.
Is that better, guys?
All right. Great. We have 40 minutes. Okay. First off, let me ask, how are you guys all doing? I don't know if this is your first convention back in a couple of years or not, but I welcome you guys back. This is super exciting for me. How many of you guys have been to a panel that I've done like this? Okay, how many of you are too shy to raise your hands and say? Because I know that, yes, I know that. All right, so most of you, this is new. All right, so I'll explain what I'm going to do. I am going to draw while I talk. Usually, when I start talking, you'll see I stop drawing, so it's really. But in my head, I'm drawing. Anyway, and then I'll take questions from the audience. If possible, if you got, generally I try to focus on like my career or art. If you guys are aspiring artists. Happy to talk about that. If you want to ask questions about Amber Heard and Aquaman 2, absolutely cannot talk about that kind of stuff, so please do not get me in trouble, I will get fired. So let us focus on what we're here for, comic book art. All right, so I'm going to just warm up. It's been a while since I've drawn, and the easiest thing to do is draw like a headshot. See that? Who is it? Batman. How do you know? What years? I'm gonna change it up now. Okay. So we have some young folks in the audience too. Yes. There's one. This industry's gonna die. Where are the kids?
I'm a kid.
There you go. All right, we got some kids. All right, fantastic. All right. I also stream, or used to, or a lot less, but I have an art stream on twitch.tv/Jim Lee. Then I post all the streams on YouTube, youtube.com/Jim Lee. So if you're an aspiring artist, there's a lot of drawings I've done over the past almost 4 years.
kid, or back when I was a kid, if my favorite artists were streaming on Twitch, I don't think I'd ever leave the room. Anyway, so you'll see some kind of fun engagement, and it really is kind of one of these panels done virtually, and it's been really nice kind of meeting people through that, and then actually meeting them in person. Are there people here that are regulars on the Twitch stream? A few. There we go. All right. Okay, so what can I say? Does anyone not know who I am? It's awesome. Okay, good. What are you doing here? What?
The AC.
The AC is good in this room. You are correct, man. Excuse me? Okay. I am a comic book artist. I started in this industry in 1987, a long time ago. I started working at Marvel. I worked there for about 6 years. The thing I did at Marvel, what did I do? I worked on Alpha Flight and Punisher War Journal and X-Men. So I think most of the work I did was on the X-Men. I co-created Gambit with Chris Claremont and Omega Red, a Wolverine villain. And I left. Okay, you're pointing. I left there to with a bunch of other knuckleheads, including myself. We were all young and stupid. But it was a bunch of other artists at Marvel. I think there were about 6 or 7 of us, and then we started a comic company called Image Comics. So we're celebrating our 30th anniversary. That was 30 years ago. So if you remember, we're officially very old. Yes. Yeah. It's weird. Anyway, getting old is weird. So I was there for about 6 years. That seems to be kind of my attention span. And then I sold my piece of Image Comics, which was Wildstorm. It's kind of a weird thing. Anyway, to DC in 1998, and I've been with DC ever since. At first, I was just sort of running my company, Wildstorm, which was based in San Diego. DC was in New York City. And then in 2010, they formed DC Entertainment, and I moved to LA, and they promoted me to publisher. And then about 4 years ago, they added a chief creative officer. So what that means is I oversee the publishing line, and I work with a woman named Ann DePease. She's the general manager, so we run the publishing side. She does the business, I do creative, working closely, of course, with Marie Javins, who's the editor-in-chief. And then on the chief creative officer side of things, I'm me and my team of 15 people, we're the liaisons within the company that, I always do that in this conference too. The liaisons for our characters with all the other content creators or divisions within Warner Brothers Discovery. So that's theatrical, like the films, Warner Brothers TV, HBO Max, Warner Brothers Animation, Warner Brothers Consumer Products, podcasts. I feel like I'm missing something. Games, Warner Brothers games. So there's a lot of stuff that goes in there. I also still draw every now and then. It's mostly covers. I haven't drawn interiors for quite a while, which is a shame. I do miss it. I don't know what else I can say about it, other than I do miss it, and and certainly coming to a convention and meeting a lot of you folks, you guys sharing the comics that kind of got you into the hobby, it kind of makes me very wistful for the days when that was sort of my singular sole purpose. Anyway, but I got into this because obviously I love comic books. But you know, when I was younger, my parents really didn't want me to read or collect comic books, and so they threw them away several times in high school, and I would have to go through the trash to get them back out. And my dad was a doctor, and he wanted me to follow in his footsteps. And you know, if you're Asian, it's like doctors. Be a doctor or a lawyer. That's it. If you have to really settle, maybe an engineer. You know, like if you want to slum it, be an engineer, whatever. And so it was really a challenge, really trying to kind of break that. And but I did convince my parents that that I really wanted to work in comic books. And it was hard because there was nothing I could really show them. That there was no internet, so all I could show them was that there are these comic books, and there are people that get paid to create these comic books. But they really had no idea what I was talking about. So they were very resistant, and at the end of the day, finally I was able to convince them to kind of, you know, after I graduated from college, I said, look, give me a gap year. I'm going to take a year to kind of try to break into comics, and if I don't, I will apply to medical school, bow to your wishes, and live a very unhappy, unfulfilled life. And I said, sure, that sounds good. But very fortunately, I think about 6 months after, 4 to 6 months after I started putting samples together, I flew to a Comic-Con in New York City and I showed my work to an editor at Marvel. He liked the work and he invited me to come into their offices. They gave me a tryout story, and then after that tryout story, which I completed, they gave me a fill-in issue of Alpha Flight, and then I guess they liked it because they gave me the gig, and I've been working in comics ever since. And my parents finally have given up on their dream. They said, all right, you do whatever you want. No, they were actually very supportive early on, and I always like to joke that, you know, I thought like once I did something like that, it would kind of be off my back, but they were so proud, and so once I got to comics, like, you know, my dad would take comics to the emergency room and share them like with the nurses, and they're like, oh, this is my son, this is his work, and I was just mortified, like, we would. They don't look at comic books, they're too busy saving people's lives. And then we go to like a Chinese restaurant for dinner. They go, hey, here's our son. He wants the Mushu pork, and he draws these comic books. And he, and then like later when we'd have Thanksgiving, I'd come home for Thanksgiving, and they'd have stacks of books. And these are for the nurses from the emergency room. They want these books signed. And so it's like kind of like a Comic-Con every time I went home. I started having to charge them for signatures to get them to stop. That's how it came about. Anyway, but yeah, so they like coming to the conventions, like even San Diego. Like one time I was doing a signing, and my mom was the first person in line. And yeah, like, what are you doing? I just saw you an hour ago home. Why are you waiting? You don't need to wait in line, but they just like sort of the excitement of participating. Anyway, so that's who I am, and so why do I draw when I'm talking? It's just kind of give you guys something to look at, because it's pretty amazing. And but the cool thing is, I give these sketches away at the end for free. Yes, and yeah. So stay tuned. You gotta pay attention. Don't leave. Okay. So while I keep working, if you guys have any questions, yeah, I'll start here.
So my question is around your career transitions.
Yes.
So Todd McFarlane has told us the story about how he saw you in the lobby as he was going in with the knuckleheads to quit from Marvel. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that, and then also what made you want to sell Wildstorm to DC and move to DC?
Cold hard cash. The story of the lobby with Todd McFarlane. Yeah, I'm not sure. Back then, drawing comics is a very lonely profession because you're mostly just drawing at home. And so while we were drawing, like, we kind of formed this telephone friendship group or whatever, and so I got one of those headsets like those teleoperators, and so you just pick it up and you can just draw on top, and I hope there's ink in this. Very suspicious. Yes, okay. And so that's how we kind of got to know each other. Todd, Rob, Mark Silvestri, Jim Valentino, Ed Larson, Rose Portasio. And I don't know, I'm not super familiar with the story that he's recounting. But I do remember there was a hotel lobby in New York City. We were there for a Sotheby's auction, and Mark Silvestri was there, and we're just trying to recruit him into it all. It was just kind of scary, this idea of leaving the big two, or leaving Marvel, striking out on our own. Success was not necessarily guaranteed. No independent comic had sold more than 200,000, maybe 100,000 copies at that point, which was Aliens versus Predator by Dark Horse, and we were selling, a million copies or whatever at Marvel, so it was interesting when we left, and I think Youngblood 1 came in, initial orders at like 600 something, 650, and then soon thereafter we were breaking the million mark with these characters that no one knew about. So it was just an incredible ride. I think we're certainly in the right place at the right time, and I don't know, it was really a really crazy time in my life, but in that there's just a lot going on. We were all, I think I was like 26, 27 at the time, and none of us were really prepared for the success that we were encountering. I think it kind of messed with our heads, or at least messed with my head for a while. But incredible journey, crazy stories. There's not enough time to go through all the stories, but anyway, so that was kind of the genesis of it all. Where was I going to go with this? Say something else. Anyway, so yeah, that's the story behind it. But there was a second part to your question.
Yeah, the Wildstorm sale to DC.
Oh yeah, so the 90s in comics were crazy. There was a lot of speculative, like the trading card or sports card business had really just gone through the roof in the early 80s. And then they were so successful at that they basically started looking for other things to kind of invest and buy into. And comics were the most familiar, adjacent kind of medium. And sales, doubled, tripled, went from millions of units, and people were overnight millionaires, really, within a day. But then it crashed. It all the bubble got too big, and it kind of all crashed, and things got really tight. And I think one of the industry was also changing. The book market, trade paperbacks were a growing part of the business, and now account for about half our business. But back then, they were virtually non-existent, right? It was all periodicals. And to shift into that business model required a lot of capital. I know this is super exciting, unless you're an econ major or something. But basically, I recognize that was kind of a different way of looking at the business. DC was a trailblazer in the collected editions book marketplace in the mass market. And so I started talking to them about selling my characters to them so I could tap into their deep resources, their deep bench. Because at that point, to get into the book market, the thing about periodicals is like, if someone orders 32,000 copies, you can print 34, 35,000, and they're all sold, you get that money. If you do a trade paperback book,
Most of them are sold, or half of them are sold essentially returnable, which means you've got to print them up. They go on the, like most things in the world, they go out there, and if they sell, great, and if they don't sell, they get returned to you, and so you have to essentially sort of pay them back for the books. And so it was just super risky to kind of convert to that business model. You have to print 5,000 books in advance. It's not like you just print exactly what you need. You have to print minimum 5,000. You might only sell 100 or 200, right? So you could really lose your shirt. So there was a number of business reasons for it at the end of the day, but it was a great decision. And I've been with DC since 1998. You, sir.
Yeah, so I have a question regarding getting your work seen. So,
Sure.
Getting seen by an editor now, what are anyone in a higher up position, what would you say is the best avenue of getting that work seen now? You know, I see so many interviews where Todd and yourself and everyone says they get these thousands of rejection letters from editors back in the day, but like now, you know, with the internet and everything, even to me, getting a rejection letter would still mean they saw it. But how do you let someone see it now with Instagram? Where are you looking for the next big artist or something you can bring up?
Good question. TikTok. I say that kind of semi-facetiously, but I've seen some pretty interesting things where people really kind of animate the drawings and stuff. I'm telling you, I think if I were an aspiring artist today, I don't know if I would take my portfolio to a convention and show it to editors. I just email them, and you don't even need to do that. I think you can actually build up a huge following. In fact, people do this regularly where, artist Gabriel Piccolo, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, he did that Raven book for us, that YA book. You know, we found him online. He had like 1.2 million followers. You know, I think if you added up all the followers that DC artists have, maybe come close to 1 million. And he had never drawn any sequential art in published. He just created art. People liked it, and so I think that's what I would do. I would just put it on social and let the work come to you. And in fact, when we started really expanding our variant cover program, we just sort of trolled Instagram and looked for artists that were doing great work. And we didn't know if they could do storytelling and draw stories, or if they're familiar with the characters per se, but if they drew a striking image that was popular and had a lot of likes, it was worth kind of reaching out to them. And so there were a lot of artists that we added to sort of the community of artists through social media. So I think that's what it would be. But even prior to social media, I would just tell people really, because of the internet, you can just create your own comics and put them online. You don't need to wait for an editor to tell you when you're ready to work. In fact, you can gain so much experience just kind of self-publishing. And so that's what I'm sure that's what I do. Yes, you sir.
My question is, out of all the Bat family besides Bat family, who was your favorite to draw?
Characters?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you, when you draw Batman a lot, it gets a little boring. It's not really, well, sometimes it's character based, but generally it's like the story. Like there's an amazing story, I want to draw that character. But I would say Batman is just cool just because people really like the character, and so that's a great drawing character that people recognize and are into. But drawing the same type of character over and over gets tired, so it's nice to add like a character like Robin or Catwoman, because they're such differently proportioned, they have different movements, different silhouettes, different ways they fight and move through space, and so that's kind of the fun of telling a story, is that it's not just about one character, it's the interplay of that character with other characters, and it kind of challenges your artistic abilities to kind of bring that character to life. So there's, scenes like from All Star Batman and Robin, where I think Batman and Robin are riding on top of a subway car, and they're sitting different poses, and Batman looks stoic and grim, and Robin looks all excited, and he's just, tell exactly the time of his life. And so to me, that's kind of the fun of it, is like bringing that personality out. If everyone's kind of the same temperament or personality, it gets really dull fast. And that's why I think when I worked at Marvel, it was the interplay between Wolverine and Jubilee, and then a character like Rogue and Gambit, right? Someone that's more reserved, and someone that's more outgoing, and so that's kind of what I look for. That's what makes drawing fun for me. It's less about the costume or the character per se. Yeah. All the way in the back.
So I never wanted Batman to have this is as your chief creative officer role. I never wanted Batman to have a girlfriend until I read Tom King's run with Catwoman.
Right.
So, and then obviously they're not together, and now every time somebody else flirts with her, I get bad on bad.
You get jealous? Is that what you're saying?
So, in Tom King's miniseries, when they got married, is that Elseworlds or is that canon? And do you have any plans for them? Because, I mean, Superman works with Lois being married to Clark, so I never thought that would work before that works. So, any plans for them to get back together? And is the miniseries Tom King just did, is that canon? When they finally got married?
It is if you want it to be. I would not consider it personal. Tom is here and he's a good friend, so sure. No, it's not. No, I think we knew kind of the direction we wanted to go creatively with that storyline that was building Batman, and I think it was a great storyline, but that's not necessarily what we wanted represented in the main continuity, and so that's Batman and Catwoman. But I feel like it's canon adjacent, the same way The Killing Joke was never meant to be in canon, but it was so great that it kind of became. Although I don't know if we could skirt around this one so easily, but even Dark Knight Returns was meant to be a standalone story, but everyone loved it so much that everyone started building foundational elements that would eventually lead to the Dark Knight Returns. So, you know, I think whether it's canon now is less important than whether it be canon someday, because that's just what.
And what will be canon someday?
Possibly. Killing Joke was not canon for a long time until it was brought in, right? So, and also I don't spend too much time worrying about things being canon or not. There's so many stories, and I know it's important for a lot of people to know whether it is or not. I'm more interested in, is this a great story? And that's why we have the Black Label line, and Elseworlds, and Multiverse, is that we can continue to explore it, and we don't have to be bound by one canon, one set of continuity. And that allows us to kind of have our cake and eat it too. It allows our creatives to have the freedom to tell the stories that they want to tell stories that are really awesome, but may not necessarily work within the wider shared universe. And then it's also exciting then to see those elements and themes reflected in the animated movies, live action movies, TV shows, etc. So, over there.
So as a kid, like coming to Comic-Con and like watching your panels and seeing stuff signed by you, you've always kind of been like my favorite artist, but I want to know like who was your favorite artist growing up?
Strangely, it was myself. No. That would be cool if that were. No, there's so many, but I think, and it's crazy because a lot of them have now left, so I feel like in many ways my childhood is just slowly disappearing, but you know, we lost Neil Adams this year, George Perez. I would say Neil Adams was probably the artist I loved the most when I was younger. Just the stuff looked so different from anyone else. And it was so realistic. 10 minutes. And then strangely, I didn't like artists like Jack Kirby, and then until I got older, and then I realized kind of like, you know, like when you're a kid, you just like sweet things, and then later, like I hated onions and mustard, but now I love all that stuff. So I felt like, you know, your taste will change and evolve. But early on, it was Neil Adams, Dave Cockrum, John Byrne was another huge, let's say Neil Adams, John Byrne, and Frank Miller in the top three, followed very closely George Perez, and Dave Cockrum, Art Adams, Barry Windsor Smith, Mike Mignola, Kevin Nolan. I would say that those are the ones I was really influenced by. Then later, people like Jeff Scott Campbell, Travis Sherray, but everyone, I would say everyone, whether I like their work or not, I will look at it and try to figure out, okay, why I liked it or why I didn't like it. And so even if there was artists that I didn't really particularly care for, I try to figure out, well, what is it about what are they doing that is not kind of turning me on to their work or their style. So I felt like there's a life lesson or an art lesson to be learned from every single creator.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Here?
Yes.
So obviously this is your dream career, and now that you've achieved it, is there anything looking back that totally took you by surprise that you were just not expecting?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. When I got into this business, I really wanted a job where I didn't have to interact with any other human being. That's sadly the truth. I was a very, I just didn't like being around people. And it made me kind of anxious, I think. And so the idea of sitting in a room just drawing and getting paid to do that, felt perfect. And I had worked in one summer I worked at a hospital, my father's hospital, the warehouse department, and then I would just see people, these professionals, and I don't know if there are any doctors or nurses here. I don't mean to disparage you guys, but I just see them walking around and interacting and being all adult, and I just felt so uncomfortable around that. It's like, how do I do something where I don't have to do anything? I stand in front of a group of people and talk to them like this. And so I chose comics, and look what happened. But what happened was, and I thought forever that this would just be a niche business, right? Just comic book fans. No one knew who Iron Man was. No one. He was a C-level character. It was really rare to meet anyone that knew anything about comics. It was such a secret society of fandom. And then things changed, mostly due to the movies, right? And now I see people walking around with T-shirts with my art on them, and then I go, "Hey, I drew that," and they go, "I don't care." But you realize that they had no idea who drew the art, right? So it went from a weird place where everyone knew everything because you were a fan, to it being so commonplace that no one even knew who did the art. They didn't care. They just liked the character, right? And so now it's ubiquitous. It's a cornerstone of pop culture. Every day you see people wearing superhero T-shirts, and so many people know about the mythology. Everyone knows who Iron Man is now. It just kind of blows my mind, right? So that I almost feel like I'm living in an alternate, parallel dimension, and I envy the Jim Lee in the other dimension that's just working alone in the room. But anyway, yeah. So I think that's probably kind of the biggest change, and then also just sort of the economics of this business have changed quite a bit too. Right? So there was a big Sotheby's, I think there was heritage auctions, right? In Dallas, actually, it just happened a day ago. And these original pieces of art are going for tons of life-changing amounts of money. And that's something I hadn't really anticipated. I kind of knew that. I'd heard of other professionals talk about I sold my artwork, for $100, now it's worth $500. That was stupid. And so in my head, I'm like, all right, I don't want to end up in that boat. So I held on to some of it as I was selling it for $100 or $500. But now the artwork's selling for crazy amounts of money. And again, that's something, if I had known, I wouldn't have sold anything. I would have put it all into Bitcoin. I would have done that too. You can't predict how things are going to go. But that was definitely something that surprised me, that it's really blown up. Not just original art, but even original comic books. Like the first appearance of Captain America sold for $3.2. He's not in there. Yeah, $3.2 million. That's crazy. I only had. Yes, sir. In the back corner. Yes.
I had a question. As an illustrator, did you have a hand in the Batman Who Laughs? And if you did, how was it different or more difficult on a new change of an old character?
Did I have a hand in the development of Batman Who Laughs?
Yes.
I'd like to. here's the thing, there's so much creative decision making that happens on a daily basis at DC. I want to say that I'm not going to say it, but there was heavy involvement, but I don't know if everyone would agree that how it actually went, right? But yeah, there was this idea that, oh, there's this parallel dark dimension, there's like this, Batman has kind of spawned all these other evil versions if, you know, if he had just maybe had that one bad day and become a villain. And other characters that had the Speed Force, if they had kind of chosen that path, like what would they end up looking like? So those characters came out of that kind of creative discussion. So, but I think a lot of these ideas have more than one sort of ultimate sort of creator. You know, you're working with editors, you're working with other collaborators, other writers and artists, and everyone's kind of throwing in their ideas. So a lot of times, you know, it's not one clean origin, in my opinion, for like how a character came to be. Even if a character is created because an editor says, hey, we need a Hulk like character in the DC universe. Did they? And then someone else creates the name, the powers, the backstory. Like, who really created that character? You know, and how much weight do you give to the editor that realized that there's this kind of white space in the universe that needs filling, and you know, we should create this. So yeah, that was a lot of fun though. That part of the business I love the most, which is sort of kind of trying to identify what's missing in the universe and how do we creatively resolve or fix these things. I'm sorry, I'm a little like discombobulated. It's been 2 years doing nothing like this, and I feel like I'm just kind of getting back in the swing of things. And so hopefully by, I think I'm doing Denver, and then Miami, and then San Diego. And so hopefully by San Diego, it'll be a much better panel. Sorry guys, I apologize in advance. But if you come to San Diego, it'll be a much better panel. Yes, very good.
So for comic book collectors, is Gambit's first appearance the
yes. I only own copies of 267, right? Wait, which was the one with the cover drawn by Andy Kubert? I should know these things. 266?
266.
What's 267?
Your cover.
My cover is 266.
Your cover's after that, yes.
Oh, no, 268 is my cover.
Oh.
Are you guys really fans, or are you guys? No, it's okay. If you're waiting for the next panel, that's fine. I get it. I'm pretty sure. Is there someone who actually knows?
268 is.
Yeah, I know that's 268. But the Gambit cover is 260. 272. What? 272. What? 266. And then, but you're asking if that's the first appearance or the annual?
Yeah. Because there's even here than the annual, but a lot of people.
I would undermine the whole comic book economy if I chose the annual, so I'm gonna say 266. Because the first appearance of Wolverine is Hulk 181, not 180, who he is in 180. Am I right?
Sure.
All your 181s are worthless, I'm sorry. Tomorrow we're gonna see it like, there's a lot of instances that are weird like that. So even in X-Men #1 that I did, there's a poster that has a bunch of characters like Omega Red on it. Technically, first appearance, right? Yeah. But no, I go with the flow. I'm a man of the people. I wanna support you, and but it has to be 266. I don't count annuals. Annuals are kind of make-believe stories. These are my rules for comics. You don't have to follow them, but you know. Right there. Look around. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
No. Oh, okay. We'll go you and then you. Okay. Good.
Okay, sir. I've gotten the advice similar, like you were saying, to jumping up front, to kind of build a social media ahead of time, and they'll come find you. So I kind of want to ask the question to a young 18-year-old hungry Jim Lee who's here today. How would he begin his journey through social media to get to where he is now? Like if he was starting in the industry now as compared to, I think it was Archie Goodwin you spoke to?
That's right. Yeah. I would start by posting a lot of pictures of my cat. Because have you seen those accounts that have like millions of followers? I'm like, why am I wasting my time 8 hours drawing a picture of Batman on a rooftop? I got 5 dogs and a cat. I could just post pictures of them and have a much more robust social following and much more wholesome, better followers. No, more likes, all that stuff. It's just weird to me, you know. I look at it, so I can't figure it out. So, you know. Gosh, I don't know. I think my approach is mostly art and then give you a little glimpse of who I am in my life. But then, even then, I have to do like a birthday post for every one of my kids. There's a lot of pressure around that. I repeat myself and like, oh my God, another birthday again? Every year you have one. What's going on? When can I stop? So I feel find that mix between kind of showing who you are and then your work. Some people just post their art and then I don't even know what they look like or where they live, and that's a little, to me, it's a little sterile. So to me, but then if it's too much of you, I want to see some art, right? So it's finding that right blend, and you know, I should probably throw in some cameras. Oh, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Is that what you're saying?
We're
Okay.
in there.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm gonna stop on this one. All right. So one more. Yes. Oh no. Oh, yes. Sir.
Okay,
Very
small.
Which comic book character do you find the hardest to illustrate?
I'm a trained professional. I've been drawing this I've been working in comics for 30, I'm not a mathematician apparently, 87,
35.
5, 4, carry with 2, what?
I'm 35.
35, I've been doing this for 35 years. Who is there? Aquaman, Captain America, Deathstroke, because they all have scales. Spider-Man, lots of webbing, very boring. I hate drawing Spider-Man. I love the character, I don't like drawing the one with the webs.
Line after line.
Any characters with animals? So Falcon with the bird thing that he's got out. Aquaman, all his supporting cast, Ixnay. Who else is on animals? Thankfully, there's mobiles now, so you don't have characters driving horses and stuff. So that's nice. But I'm not. I don't draw animals very well. I mean, I think I could if I spent 35 years. But that's kind of what it takes, I think, to get good at drawing animals. It's a lot of practice, right? And animals have their own musculature and the way they move. And like, have you ever looked at like a goat's legs? Like ours to the kneecap, and then I don't know what happened. It's horribly broken. How could they possibly walk? They look like they're moonwalking all the time because the bottom part of it goes back. I don't know. It's really weird. It kind of trips me out. Yeah. And do dogs have 4 arms or 4 legs? 2 arms and 2 legs. Does anyone know? I don't know. Things that make me stop crying. Yes, sir. Yes.
So with longer running kind of serial series, do you feel like there can be somewhat of an event fatigue, like going like big event, big event, big
No,
event?
never. Keep buying them. They get better. Of course. But no, what are you going to go do? You're fucking like, because I love them all. Is that what you're going to say at the end?
I was gonna say, like, for me personally, I'd like to see like more kind of what you might call filler, but it has like some sort of more deeper development of like relationships and not so much on the big like blockbuster moments. But maybe there's like a better ratio.
You're asking it so politely. I have to be serious because you're asking it with such sincerity. Because normally it's people like, I hate these crossovers. Can you stop doing? You're draining my wallet. Please stop. And I'm gonna stop buying comics. You keep doing it. No, I agree with you. I think every big event, it only is cool if it's character driven at the end of the day, right? You want to feel something. It's not just like, oh, this character dies, who cares, right? I want to know why they died, why should I care, and how it impacts other characters. So I think every editor writing, like, we don't sit in a room and go like, all right, let's do a big event. Let's just do one that, you know, this person dies and we just sell a lot of copies. We don't care. They all start from a good place of like, all right, this is going to be an amazing story. It's going to focus on these characters. People are going to lose their minds because we're going to do this. And it's going to be all character driven. Not all of them, obviously, are executed to the same degree of success, right? And so, but they all do start from that moment of sincerity and good intent. Whether there are too many of them, possibly, probably, you know, but the thing is, they do lift sales, they do move units, and it's tough. I mean, the same thing with variant covers. I think there are probably too many variant covers, but every time we put them on, sales go up, and so it's tough. I think it's one of the most challenging things as a publisher is finding that right balance. All right, so I think I've run out of those 3 minutes, so I'm going to stop, and we're going to give away these sketches. Given that tomorrow is Father's Day, I'd like to give it to people here that have brought their father to celebrate. There are probably more than one, so if you are in that category, okay, raise your hand. Let me see how many people. All right, okay. All right, so of this so if you win, you got to stand up, and your father has to be here with you. So if you want to call him real quick. Oh no, you don't have to stand up now. Oh, maybe we should. Yeah, go ahead, stand up then. Stand up. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys for a weird object, and whoever has that object will win one of the 2 sketches, and another one.
Of the people standing.
Of the people standing, all right. I am looking for a condiment. It's Father's Day.
A condiment, ketchup, mustard.
So if you have a packet of ketchup, or mustard, or relish.
Oh, we got somebody back here with a bag full of snacks.
That's good fun.
You guys got 3 kids.
Onions.
Huh? Mints would be
I ate some. Does that count?
Okay. All right, how about this? Are any of you people that are here with fathers celebrating a birthday today? Or
Not today, but
this
next
week?
Next
This
week?
week? Next week? Is that the closest? Next week? When are you celebrating your birthday? June 15th?
Wait, Dad's birthday or kid's birthday?
June 29th? Either. All right, so you're gonna win one, and then you'll win the other. All right. I have to leave, but I want to thank you guys for letting me kind of warm up and try some new material. Anyway, thanks so much, guys.
No, when I stood up, I did not want to.